So I'm Catherine, I'm the session host, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to Erica Hargreave, who's here to talk to us about creating a sustainable funding solution for innovations in education, technology, and storytelling. And Erica Hargreave is from the University of British Columbia, along with Laurie Yearwood from Ahimsa Media. So with that, I'll turn over the microphone to you, Erica.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. This is Ella, by the way. She's the boss around the joint. So just to, I'm actually, I'm doing my master's at UBC, and this is part of a project that I've been doing with my master's, but it's a project that I'm very thankful to the MTech Trust because they helped fund a bit of my education with this particular project, along with Grant for the Web that's been supporting the project, and BCIT where I teach, who has also been supporting the project. As sort of we get into this, because we're a small group, I would love for everybody just to take a moment to introduce themselves, and let me know if when you're introducing yourself, if you've got a project right now that you're sort of looking to build sustainable funding around. So Helena, you're just to the side of me on the screen. So maybe if you could introduce yourself first.
Hey, good morning. It's still 8:15 here in BC. Yes, I'm Helena from BC Campus, Advisor in Learning and Teaching, and I'm curious about the session, maybe more on a personal level for my future studies. I've looked around and it's quite expensive. So I was just thinking maybe I'll get some tips and ideas here today.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. And John, maybe we could hear from you next.
Yeah. Hi, Erica. Yeah, same sort of with in the same boat with just hearing about the different sustainable funding models out there. In my institution, we're looking into creating some micro-credentials, so especially around in that area. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Chris?
Hi, everyone. Yes, just out of general interest, watching Erica, I'm also a part of the MTech Trust board, so I'm very pleased to listen to what Erica says.
Oh, it's lovely to have you here this morning. And Eric.
Yes, hi, I'm Eric. I work at Knowledge One, which is an e-learning company that is working with eConcordia at Concordia University. This is the one track that interested me, working as a for-profit organization that is working or partnering with a nonprofit organization. And I'm just interested to see what we can learn here.
Wonderful. And Molly?
Oh, hi. I'm about to retire, but I'm from the private sector, a company called Brigus Learning. And I'm also on the board of an association, CELIA, which is an association of private sector people in e-learning. And I've been listening in, just trying to find ways for the private sector and the universities and colleges and K-12 to all cooperate and support each other.
Oh, wonderful. It's a needed initiative. And Stefan.
Hi, like Eric, I'm also at Knowledge One, so affiliated with Concordia. And yes, it's definitely a topic of interest. There are some new kinds of projects we're working on, so we're looking at what kinds of funding models make sense. So yeah, it's relevant.
Great. And Farnaz?
Hi, I work for Knowledge One too, and I'm also really interested in knowing different ways of funding in general. So yeah, excited to learn.
Great. And then Saul?
I'm Saul Carliner, and I teach funding, so I'm always interested in hearing how other people approach it.
Nice, nice. And then Catherine.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here as the session host, so I don't have any project on the matter at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm gonna just sort of switch over to slide sharing right now. And start with a picture of the beast. I'm not going to go into the full slides. I'm going to share in this smaller version. And the reason for that is because I'm going to be jumping around to some videos and stuff. And so it allows me to more easily sort of get to the other screens. What sort of, this is a project that Lori and I started exploring because we started with another woman in the early days too, by the name of Mary McDonald. And we started exploring this because we realized that there was a bit of a broken system out there in Canada when it comes to funding. And so we'll get into that when we get further down into the talk. And as somebody who teaches in a media studies program, in a digital storytelling in that media studies program, I wanted to start looking at what are some of the different solutions out there for my students, because there's just so many people out there, and you're going to meet some of them within this presentation, who have so many fabulous ideas around technology and storytelling and education. And so many people out there never end up making their projects because they don't get sort of they don't get the approval when they start to go and look through our different funding models. And for me and Lori, well, I think especially me, I'm incredibly stubborn. So when I get a no, I just try to find a different way of approaching things and doing things. And whereas I think a lot of other people, when they get those no's, there's this feeling like their ideas aren't of value, which is often not the case. And we'll see a little bit of that as we go through this presentation. One of the things that really sort of brought this to a head for us is a project of ours, and it's called Naturally Ours. It's a documentary and then also a web series that's all around parks and natural spaces and how they impact our lives. So it's really about the people that are inspired by these spaces. And this is a series that it shares messages of hope and cultural understanding and of environmental awareness. And it's been nominated for many awards all around the world, and we've won a couple of them. But more than anything else, it's a project that we're incredibly proud of. And so I'm gonna sort of go to the first video in this, and so I'm gonna stop sharing the screen for a second.
I'm not a lumberjack or a fur trader, and I don't live in an igloo, eat blubber, or own a dog sled. I do, however, want to meet a lumberjack and a fur trader. Spend a night in an igloo, try blubber at least once, and ride a dog sled. My name is Erica, and I am Canadian, and these are our parks.
If you have problems, go out in the forest. Take care of yourself. Go let the trees clean you off. Go let the water cleanse your body.
This is not some factory somewhere. This is life. This is life on Earth, and it's what sustained us for hundreds of thousands of years, and it's continuing to sustain us today.
Coastal cultures change people.
After I moved to South Spring, I met nature.
Feel through our spine, down into the earth, and receive. Go and spend some time in the land and start paying attention. That's where you need to start.
Okay, so and I have to apologize because that wasn't quite showing up as beautifully as it normally does. It seems that something's going on with my internet here today. That series has ended up, as I said, we've been getting a lot of attention to it, yet we have not been getting any of the funding from the various funding bodies. Hang on a sec, I'm losing my screen here.
Yeah, and in the meantime, John has put in the chat a link so that anybody can watch the clip later.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we basically haven't been getting any broadcast funding for that series, despite other programs that we've been in the same awards competitions and won more awards than them have been getting funding. And so it really sort of shone that spotlight for me on the fact of, okay, the only reason why we made this work is because I just got tired of waiting for funding. And so I actually invested and paid for this project myself. And I did it for a couple of reasons. First of all, we wanted to show people what we are capable of. This was after I'd sort of had my first car accident, which resulted in us losing a tremendous amount of work because I'm the face of our company. And so it was kind of our calling card to also show people that we were okay, we were moving forward, and we were more than capable. And it certainly has helped with that. But it's a series that we want to be creating more of this kind of content, because we kind of feel like it's something that the world needs at the moment, something that's positive, something that gets people, connecting around a shared love of nature, but then also exploring some of the ideas that that people have also been at odds with in the world as of late, and so hopefully getting people to see and learn about and listen to different people's ideas. Currently, like the funding model that we've got that's emerging from this series at the moment is, even though we're not getting any we keep getting turned down for various broadcast funds, we are getting interest from potential sponsors. So Parks Canada has expressed interest. We've had tourism boards like St. Martinique's and Swiss Tourism suggest interest in the series. And so we're hoping that we can continue with the series in those bents. Right now, and this is something that is brand new, that we've just been experimenting with in the last couple of months, and it's what Grant for the Web is funding me to experiment with, and I'll get into that later into the conversation. But we're actually pulling in money on the series now from the Web Monetization Standard. We have been picked up by a number of broadcast sites, and we're supposedly getting like kind of royalties and pay-per-views for those, but I haven't seen a single check ever for that. And so, which it's part of the problem that happens in that creative space, but it also sort of spotlights the difference that we're getting from this Web Monetization Standard as opposed to the pay-per-views, which I'll talk about further on in the conversation, or in the session, because it really is presenting some interesting opportunities. And then we've been pulling in money on this from earned revenues, whether it's because some of the things that we've done with the series, I have instilled in the courses I teach, whether it's people having me come and speak, consultancy work, like on people wanting help with building web series and things like that, and as a hired gun to help other people create their stories. So and we're also kind of looking towards what are some other funding areas that we could be exploring with this and with some other web series that we want to create. And because there is a social good component to a lot of the content that we create, we are looking towards the idea of potential foundation funding. Air Canada does a really good job of promoting Canadian filmmakers' work on their airlines, and so we've been meaning to approach people like them to see if we can get into their catalog of content, and the fact that we're also sharing some beautiful parts of Canada that travelers might want to explore. We're hoping that helps. And then we're looking at other sort of sponsorship and partnerships with products that might work with the series, whether it's sort of outdoor gear or things like that. The idea of patronage has come up, and that's something else we'll get into later on in the session, because there's one particular creator who's doing some really interesting work around patronage. And then I hate the term influencer, but it's something that in some areas that some people would consider, some of the entities that we've built to be influencers. And so there is always that possibility of, if we need to, potentially funding things through the brand ambassador route, and also through sort of affiliate marketing as well. Although I'm not really kind of a salesperson, and so I have to kind of wrap my head around how if we go that route, how we make that work so we don't feel like we're sort of selling out, because part of the reason why we've got the audience we do is because people trust us, and because we don't try to push sales or things like that on them. And so, yeah, so that's kind of where we're currently looking at for our project. But as I said, this is presented like this whole bigger issue here of the fact that so many people never even start on their projects because they're constantly turned down from funding. And so one of the things that we've been working towards, and ironically, which has become a decently funded project of ours, is this whole notion of sustainable funding and interviewing different creators from around the world on how they're starting to piecemeal together different models to work for their enterprises. And so that's what we're going to dive into right now, is look at what those funding models look like for some of the different creatives that we've been interviewing, and sort of see where there are different pathways forward with that. And so, and with these, and I'll share links afterwards, we've been sharing the interviews to our YouTube channel, and also our Cinnamon channel, and I'll explain what Cinnamon is in a little bit. And then we've also been sharing sort of case studies that we're building around those interviews on sort of Story to Go's digital magazine. So I'll also similarly share links to you there, because we go a bit deeper into things in those spaces. So one of my first interviews, because I'm at UBC and I'm a fan of the work they've been doing in the Emerging Media Lab, was with Saeed, who sort of runs up the lab there. And Saeed and I decided that we'd talk about his project, which is the Stanley Park virtual field trip project. And it was one of their first undertakings, and it was a really quite a huge undertaking in what's termed photogrammetry. And so they were basically mapping out Stanley Park in 3D with the idea that they would then use that to be able to offer different virtual field trips where people could maybe dive down into the soil and discover the different layers of the soil, or they could step back in time and see how the First Nations people utilized the lands within the park back before there was, before, you know, sort of other people from other cultures sort of moved into the lands here. And so when we're so when I was talking with Saeed, and the reason why I'm starting with him is because he really highlighted the reason why there is a need for this discussion and a need to share different ways of putting together funding models. Because when I started asking Saeed about sustainable funding, his response to me was sustainable funding. Well, in Canada, that's institution funding and grants. And so I chuckled at the time, and I said, you know, but I mean, first of all, grants tend to be for a set period of time. And so in order for something to be sustainable long term, you have to have some sort of other funding idea and model in place. But there's also a problem in Canada, and that's that quite often the funding tends to go to the same people over and over again. And certainly in the film and television market in Canada, that is a problem. And a lot of it's also administered by juries, where you have 3 people on a jury. And like where I've seen it, where, because I've written some of the grants for some of the media companies in town, and I've got them the grants, which was really rewarding. But then what they actually did with the grants wasn't what they said they were going to do with the grants. It was something totally different. Yet the next time round, they got the funding again, and it was because of their name. And so Saeed said to me when I said this, it's like, well, yeah, they keep giving them to the people that have the track records. Now, a lot of the people I talk to within the rest of the series of interviews here have a track record. They'd be winning awards for their work, yet they're not getting the funding in this way for whatever reason, whether it's that they're approaching the wrong grants, whether it's like, you know, sort of a system where you know the grants continually go to the same organizations. I don't know, but they're not getting the grants. So in terms of the project at Stanley Park, the funding model here was it's student driven. So some of those students are paid, some of them are volunteers, institution funding, and then project specific grants. So as presumably as Saeed builds and his team build out different aspects to, because really with the Stanley Park virtual field trip project, it's designed to have different professors come in and build different sections to it, whether it's on Indigenous history or geology and soil samples. They could presumably get project specific grants for each of those additions that they build on top of this project. So now, as I said, you know, one of the problems is we've got creators that are winning awards and stuff like that, yet they're still not seeing the grant money. And so I thought I'd go first to this highly creative woman by the name of Kate Hackett, who has been winning awards around the web series she's building. And so probably, you know, her first, well, certainly one of her early days web series that has gained a lot of attention is Classic Alice. And it's, I included it here just specifically too, because it does tie in education. It's all around literature. And but literature where it's presented in a very sort of a story driven, very entertaining sort of manner. And Kate is not getting grants and stuff like that. What she's doing is she initially self-funded just like we did. And then she's been, for her future projects, because the first one was so popular, she's been looking to things like crowdfunding, patronage, merchandise, and then revenue sales on streaming sites. And the revenue shares on streaming sites has been working for her only when she's been getting in on the early edges of these streaming site communities. So I think she was on the early days of sort of Amazon streaming and stuff like that. And that's actually something which I'll go into a little bit later too, because that's something we're currently discovering on Cinnamon, which is this new web monetized video platform. And I think I've made in the last month off of it about, I think we're sitting at about $1,500, which, well, you know, still won't pay for our project. I mean, that's far more than we're getting paid from when we're on actual broadcast sites and supposed to be getting some revenue shares. But Kate had a really interesting approach to patronage here, and one that she completely invented for herself, simply because she didn't like the revenue sharing split between a particular crowdfunding site that's called Patreon, which is all about sort of funding different creatives monthly, as opposed to just one sort of lump sum. And so I will let Kate explain what she has designed with patronage. So I'm going to stop sharing here and I'm going to go over to the video, and hopefully my internet is running better now. So this is a site that Kate built for her whole idea, or it's a side of her site that she built for her whole idea of this patronage thing that she's launched.
Patronage used to be one of the most important social institutions in Europe. It was so ubiquitous that Biaggioli described it as the key to social status. Writers, musicians, painters, mathematicians, patronage of the arts and sciences has been instrumental to the continuation of those arts, and traditionally came from the noble or very wealthy classes to promote their own social and political ambitions. They sponsored the artist, and the artist's success reflected well on that patron. While we definitely live in a more socially fluid society, thank goodness, maybe patronage should not have quite gone away with the advent of our modern artistic institutions, things like museums. We have moved so far away from our traditional television and film models with the advent of the digital age that actors and writers and producers like me have trouble making things meet. Hi, my name is Kate Hackett, and I'm an actor, a writer, and a producer. You may have seen some of my work in Classic Alice, Not a Plan, Kate and Joe Just Want to Have Sex, Real Rob, or maybe you're here for the hashtag Female Filmmaker Friday stories, or any of the filmmaking resources that I put up. Whatever brings you here, welcome. I wanted to take a second and walk you guys through both the new website and the resources that it provides, as well as give you some coupon codes and fun giveaway stuff. So let's take a look. First, I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the Kate Hackett website. But I think what we're really interested in is the patronage page. It walks you through all of the tiers available. You can see them all listed here and down here. They're exactly the same as my old Patreon. Nothing has really changed for you guys. And if you decide it makes you nervous to join me on this site, you're more than welcome to continue to join me on Patreon. While we're here, there's also an FAQ and Blog post for patrons, I've divided it up based on your tier and what you would have access to. If that's easy for you, you can also log in and register. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know, but that's it for this site. So something you get when you sign up for the mailing list is a free production checklist. I will also be sending out a pitch deck to any supporter who joins at a level 3 and up. So if you pledge $3 or more, you will get a Classic Alice pitch deck. It's our original pitch, so you can see what the series was supposed to be and where it wound up going. I'm also really excited to give away some coupon codes, which I will link down below, where you can grab.
Okay, so so you get the general idea with Kate on where she's going with that. But I thought I was quite ingenuitive when she saw a problem in one area to, okay, well, maybe I could build something like this for myself. And so much of this is the reality of that creative digital space right now, is especially for the creators that are on the early stages of emerging media and emerging technologies, is they're having to figure out how to do this themselves and how to figure out these funding models for themselves, because a lot of our granting bodies haven't caught up. And even if they say they have, they often still don't understand. So they're, because the juries might be in other places like traditional film, for example, in which Kate actually presents a little bit of a threat to them. Yeah, it's part of the reality of being in those spaces right now, is figuring out those pieces to build forward in a new way. And so she's somebody that's doing that. Now, another person that I talked to in this whole journey that has been winning awards around her work and doing some really, really cool things is Nicole Kahn. And Nicole Kahn has built this sort of, it's basically an interactive animated storybook building site, and she's geared it towards the education market. She was initially thinking of it for teaching ESL in an interesting way, but where students can also learn things like coding, and they can learn things about story structure. And they can even, like, there's elements that are now built in so that students can learn how to build games within this system as well. And so I kind of fell in love with it after we started, like after interviewing her and sort of doing some exploring around on it. So I actually ran a camp for BCIT last summer on animated storytelling, and half of the camp was using this platform of what Nicole's been using out there to create this. Now, in talking with Nicole about her funding, and so I'm just going to make sure I had this queued up, but I kind of have the feeling it sort of moved. So okay, no, it's in the, yeah, it's in the right spot. So I'm going to just play Nicole here.
Gathering that probably goes part and parcel with building up the financial, like, the financial model behind your project. What, when you first started this, did you have sort of some grant money? Did you just invest your own blood, sweat, and tears? Like how?
Blood, sweat, and tears. So we actually went the route of, at the very beginning, I tried the route of pitching to try to get investors maybe interested in the platform and all of that. Unfortunately, it didn't go so well, and I realized that if I wanted things done, I should just hunker down and just do it and build it. Because the amount of time that you spend trying to pitch and trying to sell takes away from any time that you might do in actually developing your project. So it's a weighing of what you think would actually be most beneficial. And unfortunately, education is not a sexy industry in the investment sphere. First of all, at least in the areas that I was pitching in, maybe if I were to pitch in, I don't know, in the US, it might be different. I don't know. I never tried pitching in the US. I mostly pitched in Taiwan, and I also pitched in France. And unfortunately, in those times that I pitched, the people I were pitching to were very disconnected from the problems that I was saying that were existing. For example, they're like, oh, what's the point of creating stories? Who reads stories? Who wants to write stories? I'm serious. This was a question that they asked. Then the second thing would be, if you only need 100,000, then since you went to MIT, why don't you just ask your friends and family to pitch in and pay for it? Oh, wow. And there were just clues like that led me to think that maybe we were not in the same world. Yeah. So we decided to no longer spend time trying to chase after those type of people and just work on trying to build a good product, because we believe if we build a good product, people will just use it. And then once you make something good and people like it, then people will automatically be your salespeople and tell other people about it. So our main goal is just to make the best product that we can that can fulfill the needs of our target audience.
From that initial step, so I'm just going to switch back over to my slides here. Are you guys seeing that, the slides right now? Yes, no?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Yep. Okay, good. Yeah, so in talking more with Nicole, so the way they've been sort of after their initial self-funding, which I think they're still doing some self-funding, what they're looking towards building is kind of a freemium model. So you can access things for free and try them out for free on their site. They do have teachers licenses and institution licenses, which will allow people to get the full library of images and sounds to build their interactive stories. And then they're also sort of supporting things with earned revenue from workshops around this. Now, this is a project I'm really hoping is successful, because these guys have been doing, during the beginning of the pandemic, they offered up the resource for free to schools and to teachers to be able to make online learning more interactive and engaging in the early stages of the pandemic. Nicole has been, working her ass off, sort of offering different clubs and free camps and things like that for kids to be building, to be engaging, and has been also sort of hosting a series of webinars with different teachers. And so, and she's incredibly responsive, like when you kind of send her, oh, hey, I'd really love it if your tool could do this, I'm finding this to be an issue. And usually, even if she doesn't see it right away, usually I'll get an email back a week later, like, that says that they've all of a sudden put in this new feature that addresses all the problems that I was running into. Yeah. So, and as I said, they've since won some awards, but I still don't think that they're sort of getting any funding from mainstream ways. Although, as Nicole pointed out in the video, she's kind of shifted her focus, rather than applying for grants, on kind of finding, on actually building and kind of the whole field of dreams sort of way of build it and they will come. Although, as she's discovering, it's build it and engage, and then hopefully they will come. So another sort of creative storyteller that I spoke with in the whole mix is this woman, Maria Garcia Soriano, who's based in Italy. She has her own sort of nonprofit organization that's all about building open educational resources. And I will, she for this one project that she was building, which is called Animals of the Great War, and basically it's an ebook that's all about giving teachers and students a different way to explore World War I from the perspective of animals, and with the idea of hoping that through seeing from the perspective of animals who cross borders and don't really see borders, that it'll get kids engaged in looking at war in a different way, and also looking at the different perspectives and looking at it with empathy. And so with her sort of funding, she went to a European crowdfunding source, which is called Gotio, which I found really interesting when I sort of delved into it deeper, because it's basically a crowdfunding platform that's focused around this idea of building a social economy. And they set up a lot of match funding competitions. So where if, depending on how much your project brings in from the crowdfunding, they've got different foundations and businesses that'll match those funds and to help you to make your project a reality. And so she was successful with that, but what she was successful with within the case of this project was meeting the base to paying their translator on the book so that they could get the book translated into English. She and her partner ended up doing their side of the work sort of on the blood, sweat, and tears method. But she learned a lot in the process, and including, like, you know, how when one is sort of approaching that crowdfunding way of doing things, how important it is to have a plan in place to engage people, to run a whole campaign around it, and to really amplify what it is that you're doing out there. They in this case, it was their first crowdfunding campaign, and they also sort of found that it was something that the Italian public wasn't used to. So part of it ended up being kind of educating that public around why they should engage and support a project in that way. And so, but the lovely thing is that she really got excited about this whole idea of social economies. And so I will just stop sharing here and take you over to her so you can just hear some of her enthusiasm that she got for that.
I realized that there is a world of professionalities and people who work in this different system of funding project, and I like it. In Italy, it's not so. There's not. I mean, there's just one platform, but the project on it are not very interesting, and not interesting for a cultural level. But I could have experience in Goteo platform, for example. There's such an attention on a social problem, on education, on gender, and on project related to the real problem in this real world, which is a world not so good to live. And the fact that people want give their donation, they support to such kind of project, This is very interesting, and I'd like to be part of this different economy, this social economy. Well, this is important. I think would be important. I don't know how, to what extent it could work in this over capitalist world, but maybe this social economy could save us.
So, and there is another video, we just don't have time for it right now, but Maria also goes into the whole notion of culture needing to be free, because unless people are able to sort of engage in education and engage in things that will introduce them to different perspectives, nothing's going to change in the world. And I'm sure I'm sort of speaking to the choir here and sharing that, but it also then reemphasizes too why it's so important that we find these different ways of building funding around projects. Now going to the other end of the spectrum, a project that's been really actually decently funded, and I think because the people who sort of started this project were had a bit more of sort of a business foundation, but also as a result had access to people like angel investors and things like that. And so Fundsy is an app. It's an app that is designed to share micro learning mini courses, but mini courses that are specifically aimed at helping to build people better lives. And so their main market for this was initially in Africa and helping to give people entrepreneurial skills and things like that so that they could build new jobs, new opportunities for themselves. Now their whole funding model with this is what they've been doing is they've been partnering with a lot of government organizations to deliver courses that the government wants to get to people. So they're based in Finland, and so they've been working with people like the government of Sweden to build courses for new immigrants on sort of entering into life in Sweden and helping them to navigate the way. And so that's how they're funding their particular funding model. They're also looking later on down the road into potentially offering certificates for some of their courses as another way of funding things. Now, the thing that I am super excited about right now is the funding journey that I've been getting taken on through Grant for the Web. And this, if it works, I think this has the potential to basically change, to really create the opportunity for a lot of the creators that we've spoken with so far, especially the educators and the storytellers. So people like Maria and like Kate Hackett, because what this is basically a number of people have gotten together and they've decided that they need to change a way how the financial structure works on how creators are getting money for the things that they're creating. So rather than, the big organizations like YouTube making the majority of the money off of creators' work, is making it more equitable for the creators themselves. And so through this, they've launched this initiative called Grant for the Web that's sort of supported by COIL, Mozilla, and Creative Commons. And I've been fortunate to, David Porter, who's kind of been my advisor through this whole journey on this sustainable funding series, he sort of nudged me in the direction of this grant. So I've been fortunate that I've been in the first round of the funding. I would suspect that there's going to be another round of funding coming up this spring. And this is something to look into because they are funding all different sorts of projects and different sorts of people. And because I think their whole goal in really sparking this initiative is to get it out to as many different people to champion throughout the world as possible. And so what it basically is through sort of blockchain technologies, they're creating these micropayments that goes to the creators. So on day one of my setting these up on our sites, I started to actually see money come in from this, and it was just small micropayments. But over time it all adds up. And so with this, there's Coil that's kind of creating things so that you can monetize things like your WordPress sites, and also things out there like your YouTube videos and things like that. But then there's also these fully web monetized platforms that are building up. So these are things like Cinnamon, which is kind of like a YouTube, but a web monetized YouTube. GFAM, who I've got an interview with, but we don't have time to watch right now, which is kind of like an Instagram platform that's web monetized. There's like MG Social, which is kind of more like your Twitter style of platform. And the beauty with it is you can decide whether you're going to gate your content or whether you're going to keep it fully open. And so a lot of my content is fully open. And what I'm seeing from this is like an opportunity here for like the open educational courses that we're building. I sometimes have people that just want a home for their open educational course, so they build it on Story2Go. And so sometimes we have a budget and we pay those people, and sometimes just because they want a space for it and we might not have a budget, we're just hosting it and giving them a space for their content. But with this, I can then now set up those people who we're hosting the space for to have a payment pointer that would, anytime people are spending time on their content and viewing their content on our site, they would collect the micropayments as opposed to the site collecting the micropayments for it. And as I said, even though the increments are small, like I'm actually seeing real money come in. And so that $1,500 that I said that I've made so far, which has mainly been from our Cinnamon videos, that's $1,500 American, which, you know, is kind of, it's exciting. And that's just been in like, I think 3 months of me sort of experimenting in those spaces. So obviously not enough to pay our bills yet, but it presents an opportunity, and it's still early days. So that opportunity is only going to get greater. And so I know I'm sort of running out of time here. So I'll just, you know, there's more slides I had, and there's things that I didn't get into, which I'll sort of share links to. And for anybody who wants to like sit down and have a conversation, or wants some direction on how to get started on some of this stuff, or just to bounce ideas off of directions to go in for your funding, I'm happy to have those conversations and continue chatting, whether today or next month or next year. So yeah, because I just, there's so many people out there with such great ideas, and I want to see everybody, you know, sort of being able to pursue their dreams and passions and get some of this good out into the universe.
Thank you so much, Erica. We can feel your drive and your passion around this topic. So that was very helpful. Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I had hoped to make it more interactive, but it's always so much to get through. And
absolutely. Okay, well, thank you very much to everybody who participated, and to you, Erica. I also encourage you to go back to the schedule to see what's next on the agenda, where I think the conference is wrapping up in the next couple of hours. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good rest of your day.